All right, good evening. We're going to get started. Welcome. Thank you all for coming tonight. Those of you in the audience and those of you joining us online, really appreciate you being here. My name is Miriam Karad, and I am the Assistant Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources in Governor Northam's office. I'm here with you all tonight to talk to you about coastal resilience, flooding, and resilience in your communities, and to hear from you about your community needs. As I mentioned, I am the Secretary of Natural and Historic Resources, who is in charge of this project. First, we're going to do a couple of things tonight. We're going to first talk about coastal resilience. Then we're going to talk about what your community needs are. So a couple questions. Those of you online, feel free to use the chat to engage. And those of you in person, we have a mic going around as well. And then we'll talk about next steps. So what is coastal resilience? We define resilience as the ability of natural and built coastal environments to withstand and recover from extreme weather, storm surge, and recurring flooding. What does that mean? We're really talking about strengthening your community's capacity or capability to anticipate, prepare for, respond to, and recover from these hazards. We want to be able to minimize the damage to our well-being, public health, the economy, and the environment. I don't have to tell you all, especially in your communities, the need for coastal resilience and the existential threat that we face from rising water and the effect of climate change. That often, as you probably definitely know, oftentimes tidal flooding, also known as nuisance flooding, storm surges, and of course, rainfall. So our challenge here is that over 6 million people, or about 70% of the Commonwealth's population, lives in coastal areas in risk of flooding. In 2018 and 2019, Virginia experienced 9 major flooding events, with the damages that totaled up to $1.6 billion. As many of you already are aware, Virginia has the highest rate of sea level rise on the East Coast, endangering billions of dollars in private property and public infrastructure. So what's driving this increase? As you can see, construction, development, changing weather patterns and severe storms, all things that you're very well aware of, sinking land as well as rising waters. Here, tonight we're in Chesapeake, and you'll see, if you all can see the arrow pointed to the area where we are currently in tonight at the Tidewater Community College in Chesapeake. And as you can see, 2020, by these numbers, you can see that area covered currently. You can see in about 40 years that will substantially be more land affected there. So this really looks at, and what we're looking at here is your exposure to coastal flooding hazards. And obviously the darker it is, and it's not as clear up here, but hopefully folks can see that is substantially increasing in just a matter of 40 years. In the next 40 years, coastal flooding may impact about 44,100 more people than it currently does. It will also affect 18,600 more buildings approximately, and about 23,600 more acres of land in just the coastal region. So that really sets the stage for what we're talking about today. I want to invite you all that are in the room and online to tell me a little bit about your communities. So the first question I think we want to pause here is to hear from you. What causes floods here? And what does it look like for you all? Oh, thank you. So that is going to be directly to the Zoom. So I guess that's really for the Zoom. The mic is, yeah. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Mhm. Thank you for sharing. So what we're hearing is extreme weather events, flooding, and everyday increased rainfalls. Please go. Mhm. Mhm. So some concerns around infrastructure and the drainage and the ability. We have some questions on, or some responses online.
Tides in the Elizabeth River, wind-driven tides in lower rivers, rainfall, and storm surges. I guess you pointing out where she's experienced the problems with tides from the Elizabeth River. So she experienced rain-driven tides, storm surges.
Thank you. So what is most at risk for you all when you're talking about these flooding events, and what is being damaged in your community? Thanks, Jody. Mhm. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, awesome. More.
In my neighborhood, our biggest problem is that we're losing our houses. Instead of doing proper drainage, they are demolishing the homes. It's through FEMA. But the homes, because it's repetitive flooding, they qualify to be destroyed by FEMA. But it would be helpful if we had improved drainage.
Thank you. That's helpful. So that goes really well into our next questions. How does it impact you? We talked about how it impacts your homes, and of course impacts you. Anything online or Calvin? Awesome. No. So how does it change your route to work? Does it affect your evacuation routes? Does it affect the way you go to the grocery store in your everyday life? Really, we're talking about, does it affect your ability to get in and out of your homes and do what you need to do on a daily basis? If you happen to use a primary vehicle as your transportation, is it affecting you? Is it affecting your public transportation routes? Those kind of things. Love to hear from anybody who's seen that affect them on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, and I think, from a show of hands, has it affected you in that sense? Sure. So I heard a little bit about infrastructure, and the other question that we also that we have, that the plan has really here is, does your community's sewage and septic system is affected, those kind of things. And so as you all provide information or provide information to us, we want to hear those kind of things. So we're really here to talk and listen to you all about what you're experiencing. But what we also want to do is talk about preparation and respond. What we want to do is, I guess the question is, where do you get your information when there is an extreme weather event or there is an increased rainfall effect? So we have a couple of things up here, of course, the Weather Channel and NOAA. Those are great resources, especially when we're talking about evacuation. If there is a hurricane coming in, of course, the Department of Emergency Management, our partners on a lot of this work. Do most folks use all of those things? Anything else? Radio, all those kind of things. Cell phone. Okay, great. And then this was mentioned not too long ago, but do you have flood insurance? There's a little bit of information we've provided both. We'll provide online, and we'll provide that at the end here, as well as handouts here today too, to talk a little bit about that. I know there's concerns around rates and all of those kind of things. And really just want to highlight the need to have, to be informed. And really, when we're talking about being informed, it also, has to do with being prepared when there is something that occurs. And what we really want to highlight, and this is a NOAA graphic that essentially is really important. If you take away one thing tonight, I think take away this. Do we really know how deep the water is? And think the numbers really, for me, were pretty jarring the first time I heard them, but about 6 inches of fast moving water can knock you over and carry you away. When we get to 12 feet, or 12 inches rather, not feet, 1 foot, it can carry a small car away. And about 18 to 24 can carry a bigger vehicle. That's pretty drastic, and we're talking about inches here. Another resource we really want to highlight is Know Your Zone. So many of you probably have looked it up, know what zone you're in, here in Chesapeake or right here. But really a great resource to know where the evacuation, when to evacuate and what your evacuation route is. Another thing that we have for you all tonight is this evacuation guide that is here in person, also available online, and just a really great guide that helps kind of prep you for a lot of these things. Switch back to the state efforts now, and I want to talk about one element of our coastal resilience framework and efforts here. It's called the Community Flood Fund. Really important to kind of just keep getting the word out on this one. This really is intended to provide support for the regions and localities across Virginia that are in need of this support and funding, and localities and state and federal partnership here to support projects that will continue to support coastal resilience efforts. And there's a little bit more information that is provided here as well. And if anybody has any questions about it, happy to provide that. But if there are projects that are worthy or that are that you'd like to highlight for the state, this is a great effort, or this is a great program for your localities to take part in and be prepared. So I just mentioned the Coastal Resilience Master Plan. So Virginia's first Coastal Resilience Master Plan is on the cusp of coming out here within the next month. The goal here with this plan is to align our state efforts and assist local governments in reducing flood risk through planning and implementation of large-scale projects and that promote protection and adaptation initiatives. So that's a lot of words to essentially say what we want to do. It's a whole government approach here to try to tackle this issue. We really want to ensure equity. So we're doing these community meetings and really focusing on what perhaps are traditionally underserved areas need. And really that's part of coming out and doing the outreach efforts, but also ensuring that as we look at projects, we look at the best and most equitable proposals. Also kind of looking at a broader view, we're looking at the whole state, of course. And then looking at funding strategies and how we can best capitalize on these dollars. Coastal Resilience Master Plan will be coming out here in a month, as I mentioned, and just want to highlight that if you want any more information, to go to our website and the Secretary's Office's website for more information. The Department of Conservation and Recreation is where this plan will live, and really, as I mentioned, kind of the updates will be available there as well. So I want to put up this information. Anybody who has questions, both online and so on and so forth, be able to contact us through that email address. This is an ongoing effort. Really want to kind of turn it back to you all and hear a little bit more about what you're experiencing in your communities. So I know we talked about some of the things that you're seeing. Really want to go back and ask a simple question. So if you were to evacuate, where would you go? Hotel, okay. So the reason I highlight this question as well, and if there's any comments online as well, is as we look at this issue, we also want to look at it through an equity lens. And so a lot of what we're looking at, or what we're asking here as well is, if you have the resources to evacuate, oftentimes that is a huge part of it. So anybody who is concerned about those resources, we want to make sure we know and kind of know where, what you're able to do. Another question is, do you have flood insurance? You don't necessarily, you can just raise your hand, but anybody who has flood insurance, okay. When the plan comes out here next month, you'll see outreach efforts into the next year to also not only gather information, but also to make sure that we continue to build on the community's needs. So I have talked at you long enough. I just want to mention that we have some maps on the side here for folks to help us locate where flooding is happening. Please find the areas that maybe near your jobs or at home that you want to highlight are being affected by flooding and increased flooding and rising waters rather. So with that, I will kind of pause to see if anybody has any questions or if anybody has comments. Yep. Yeah.
You mentioned grants and also what we can do to protect or prepare for flooding. So it sounds like it's very high level and not at the homeowner level. Is there anything the homeowner should be doing? Just for instance, you asked if water or sewer was getting affected, and that's, I think, only if it gets inundated with water. If a pump gets inundated with water during a flood, then that would impact your water and probably your sewer too. And same thing with the sewer system if they're overloaded with rainwater or with the tide getting blown in during a storm. So that's all high level, something the city has to do for us, the citizen. But is there anything this coastal plan, master plan will do for the citizens? Any money, for instance, for us to raise up our air conditioning or put in flood vents?
Thank you for the question. So a large part of this plan is identifying those best practices and finding out where the gaps are. And so I wish I had a better answer for you other than if we need to keep hearing that. As I mentioned, it's a whole government approach here to best utilize our resources and really help and work with our localities and homeowners. I think part of what we're doing right now is trying to gather information and talk to folks and really look at, there's a portion of the plan that also looks at relocation efforts and also what to do with property. And so I think that's certainly something that we continue to talk about and we need to build. At this time, we're really looking at how we can best utilize our collective efforts at a state level and really help and support those localities. I think I would always encourage folks to continue looking at the updates and then providing that feedback on what you'd like to see. Mhm. Sure, absolutely. So great segue into next steps. So the plan and this effort will be largely undertaken at the Department of Conservation and Recreation. You see the logo, I believe, in the first slide here, but it will be housed there and supported by various other agencies like the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And I think the effort there is, regardless of who's at the helm, these efforts need to continue. And so I think there's buy-in both from the community, the localities, planning districts, and everyone who's continuously worked on these efforts to continue moving forward. You'll see that this is the first reiteration of a plan, and we hope that, and we trust that as this, of course, will continue to be a problem, that we will continue to work on these efforts. So I hope that answers your question. Being housed at the state agency level, although it's a governor's initiative, really, I think, creates a place for it moving forward. Any other questions? Sure. Yeah, and all of these presentations are recorded. As I mentioned, we've been around the region and they're available, and more information on our website, and will be available here shortly. And of course, just a reminder on the maps. But any other comments? Go ahead, please. Sure. Great.
To get our people out who don't have transportation of their own, if it's a bad situation.
Yeah, great question. So I can't stress this booklet and the resources that the Virginia Department of Emergency Management provides. They also have a regional representative as well. So we're working, this is more of an infrastructure and planning initiative, but we continue to work very, very closely with and ensure that those issues are being heard and relayed. And so we'll continue working with VDEM. And there's a lot of different programs that I think are in support of that live in the Department of Emergency Management and can provide support, especially to our under-resourced neighborhoods and communities, as well as those that perhaps are in need of those services. Hopefully that answers your question, but I think, again, VDEM, that agency is running that support. Any questions online? Well, thank you all so much for your time tonight. I'll stick around and answer any other questions you might have. Really appreciate your time. And again, I'll just go back to the last slide. If you have Any additional comments, concerns, that is the email address and then our website as well. Please feel free to reach out to us. Again, thank you so much, and we appreciate your time tonight.